All right, so today we're diving deep into a story that's really captured imaginations for centuries. The Trojan War. Epic battles, legendary heroes, and, well, a conflict that's kind of become like the ultimate tale of love, war, and fate.
You know, it's funny because it really does have it all. Intrigue, betrayal, love, and of course, you can't forget about the meddling gods.
Oh, yeah. But before we get to all that, let's rewind a bit.
Okay.
What exactly sparked this whole Trojan War thing? I mean, what led to this massive clash of civilizations?
Well, the ancient Greeks believed that the Trojan War wasn't just some random event. They thought it was part of, like, this grand divine plan, orchestrated by Zeus himself.
Oh, Zeus. Of course. Always got to be the center of everything.
Okay. So Zeus, he had this idea. He wanted to, like, thin out the human population a bit.
Interesting population control method.
Yeah. And what better way to do that than a good old-fashioned war, right?
Yeah. I guess that's one way to do it. But how does a god, even one as powerful as Zeus, actually go about starting a war?
Well, in this case, it all started with a beauty contest.
A beauty contest?
Yeah, the Judgment of Paris. It's like the beauty contest of all time. You've got Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, you know, the goddesses. They're all vying for the title of fairest of them all.
Oh, I can already see where this is going. A beauty contest with goddesses. That can't possibly end well.
You're telling me, so these goddesses, they weren't above a little, you know, persuasion. They each offered Paris, this Trojan prince, a little something in exchange for his vote.
I bet. What kind of bribes are we talking about here?
Hera, she was all about power, promised him control over all of Asia.
Not bad.
Then you got Athena. She was offering glory in battle, you know, making him the ultimate warrior.
Okay, so power and glory.
Right. But Aphrodite, oh, she went all out. She promised him Helen.
Helen, as in Helen of Troy.
The most beautiful woman in the world.
Yeah, okay. I could see how that might be tempting. So what did Paris choose? I'm guessing he went for the beauty.
Bingo. Paris being, well, Paris, he couldn't resist Helen.
Makes sense. But wasn't there just a tiny little problem with that? Like, wasn't Helen already married?
Oh, yeah, just a small detail. Helen was married to Menelaus.
Who also happened to be the king of Sparta.
Exactly. Talk about awkward, right?
Yeah, understatement of the century.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this is where things go from, like, a beauty pageant to a full-blown international incident.
You got it. See, Helen's dad, Tyndareus, he made all of Helen's suitors swear an oath. They had to protect her and her husband no matter what.
Ah, so that's how everyone gets dragged into this.
Pretty much. When Paris whisked Helen off to Troy, whether she was kidnapped or went willingly is still debated, it triggered, like, a domino effect. All those Greek leaders, bound by their oath, they had to help Menelaus get his wife back.
Wow, so a divine beauty contest sparked a war that lasted a decade.
That's right, a whole decade.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've got the backstory, the drama, the divine intervention. Now let's talk about the main players in this epic showdown.
Okay, let's do it.
Who are some of the big names on each side? Like, who should we be paying attention to?
All right, well, on the Greek side, you've got a whole lineup of legendary heroes. First up, Achilles.
Yeah, Achilles. I feel like everyone knows the name Achilles.
He's like the ultimate warrior. Practically invincible, all thanks to his mom dipping him in the river Styx when he was a baby.
Right, the whole Achilles heel thing.
Yeah, his heel was the only vulnerable spot. But even with that, he was a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, so Achilles is on the Greek side. Who else?
Then you've got Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, leader of the Greek forces.
Powerful guy.
Very powerful. But also known for, let's just say, his arrogance. He definitely made some questionable decisions during the war.
I bet. Those power-hungry types, they always do.
Right. And of course, we can't forget Odysseus.
Oh, Odysseus. Now, he's a tricky one.
Super smart, cunning strategist. You know, the brains behind the Trojan Horse.
Ah, yes. The Trojan Horse. That's a story for the ages. But hold on. Before we get ahead of ourselves, what about the Trojans?
Oh, they weren't just sitting around waiting to be conquered.
I don't think so.
They had some serious heroes on their side, too.
Like who?
Well, there's Hector, Prince of Troy, fierce warrior, and, you know, a devoted family man.
So a real stand-up guy, even if he was on a wrong side.
Exactly. He was fighting for his home, his family, everything he loved. Really a tragic figure in a lot of ways.
I can see that.
And then there's Priam, the king of Troy. Old guy, burdened by, you know, the weight of the war, the consequences. Really makes you think about the toll these conflicts take on everyone.
Right. It's not just about the battles, is it? It's the human cost, the ripple effects.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got the instigating incident, the players. Now let's dive into the heart of the action. What were some of the key moments, the big events that shaped the course of this war?
Well, first, you got to remember, this war dragged on for a decade. It wasn't just some quick battle.
A decade? That's a long time to be at war.
It was. There were sieges, countless battles, acts of heroism, you name it. And of course, the gods were always there, meddling in things.
I bet. But were there any specific events that really stand out, like turning points in the war?
Yeah, there's one that's really significant, really tragic. The death of Patroclus.
Patroclus, who was that?
He was Achilles' best friend, like a brother to him. And when Hector killed him, well, let's just say Achilles didn't take it well.
Oh, I can imagine. That must have been devastating for Achilles.
It was, and it sent him on a rampage. Ultimately led to Hector's death, too.
Wow, it's like a chain reaction of tragedy and loss. It's amazing how these ancient stories can still evoke such powerful emotions, even after all this time.
It really is. That's the power of these myths. They tap into something universal, something about the human experience that just transcends time.
I agree. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, the setup, the players, some of the key events, but how does this epic clash finally come to an end? Everyone knows about the Trojan Horse, right? Was that really the final blow? Like, how did that whole thing go down?
The Trojan Horse, oh, that was a turning point, no doubt. It was Odysseus's idea. You know, he was always the clever one.
So it was the trap.
Oh, yeah. This giant wooden horse, supposedly a gift to the Trojans, a peace offering, but inside, packed with Greek warriors just waiting for the right moment to strike.
Talk about risky. Did the Trojans really buy it?
Well, some were suspicious. Cassandra, this prophetess, she warned everyone, said it was a trick. And Laocoon, a priest, he tried to warn them too.
What happened?
They didn't listen. The Trojans thought the horse was a symbol of victory, brought it inside their city walls. Then, under cover of night, the Greek warriors, they snuck out of the horse, opened the city gates for the rest of the army.
And that was it. The end of Troy.
That was it. The sack of Troy. A decisive victory for the Greeks. But the story doesn't end there.
What do you mean?
The journey home for the Greeks, it was anything but easy. Agamemnon, for example, he returned home to a, well, let's just say an unpleasant surprise orchestrated by his wife.
Oh yeah, Clytemnestra. She wasn't too happy with him. And then there's Odysseus. 10 years wandering the seas, battling monsters, all trying to get back home.
Exactly. His journey home, it's a whole other epic. But what's really fascinating is the lasting impact of the Trojan War.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
This isn't just ancient history. It's a story that continues to resonate with us today. It's amazing to think that a conflict that happened so long ago, like way, way back, can still have such a powerful hold on us.
It's true.
What is it about the Trojan War that just keeps fascinating and inspiring people, even after, thousands of years?
Well, I think it's because the Trojan War isn't just a story about battles and heroes, it's like a cautionary tale. It explores those, darker aspects of human nature, like ambition, rage, revenge, all those things that, are still relevant today.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we keep seeing these same patterns repeat themselves throughout history, even in our own lives, right?
Exactly. The Trojan War, it's like this lens we can use to examine how complex human behavior can be and the consequences that come with our choices. You look at someone like Achilles, for instance. His rage, it came from the sense of injustice, but ultimately it leads him down a path of self-destruction.
It's that classic tragic hero thing, isn't it?
It is. It's a reminder that even the greatest, the strongest can be consumed by their flaws.
And then there's Agamemnon. Talk about bad decision.
Oh, yeah. Agamemnon, his arrogance, his lust for power, that decision to sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia.
Oh, right, to appease Artemis.
Yeah, that cast a pretty dark shadow over the whole Greek campaign.
It's a reminder that the people in power, they make decisions that can have huge consequences. And sometimes those consequences are pretty devastating.
But even with all the tragedy and the bloodshed, there are these moments of humanity, compassion, even in the midst of all that.
That's true. It's not just good versus evil. It's about flawed individuals dealing with these, extraordinary circumstances. You see loyalty, love, even empathy between enemies sometimes.
Yeah, like Hector, right. Even though he's a Trojan prince fighting for his city, he's also this loving husband, devoted father. Those scenes with his wife, Andromache, and their son, Astyanax.
Heartbreaking. They really show the human side of him, make him relatable.
It's like even in war, those basic human emotions, connections, they don't just disappear.
Exactly.
And even Achilles, with all his rage and brutality, you see a flicker of something else, like compassion, when Priam begs him to return Hector's body.
That scene is so powerful. It reminds you that even in the middle of conflict, you can still have shared grief, a recognition of our shared humanity. It can transcend the boundaries of, who's on which side.
Absolutely.
It's just incredible how these ancient stories can still affect us so deeply.
I know, right? They give us insights into what it means to be human.
And remind us that some things, they're just timeless. Our struggles, our triumphs, they're all there in these stories.
Yeah. And the Trojan War, it's especially captivating because it's like holding up a mirror to our own world.
In what way?
We see ourselves in these characters, the heroes, the villains, everyone in between. We grapple with the same questions about fate, free will, what war really costs, why peace is so hard to find.
Those are some heavy questions that people have been wrestling with for centuries.
For sure.
But let's shift gears for a bit. I've always been curious about the historicity of all this. Was the Trojan War a real event or just a really, really good story?
The million-dollar question. It's one that's kept historians and archaeologists busy for a long time.
I bet. So what's the verdict? Myth or reality?
Well, we mostly know the Trojan War from Homer's Iliad, right? But there's more and more evidence suggesting that there might actually be some historical truth to the story.
Wait, hold on. You're saying Troy, like the actual city of Troy, the walls, the battles, that might have actually happened?
The evidence is pretty compelling, actually. Back in the 19th century, there was this archaeologist, Heinrich Schliemann.
I've heard of him. Wasn't he obsessed with finding Troy?
Totally obsessed. He was convinced Homer's epics were based on real events, so he set out to find the lost city. And guess what?
He found it.
He found it.
Wow. So Troy might not be a figment of someone's imagination after all.
It might be more than that. Excavations at the site, it's in modern-day Turkey, have uncovered these remnants of a fortified city, and it dates back to the Bronze Age. That's the same period the Trojan War is believed to have happened.
So they're literally digging through layers of history, uncovering clues to a story we thought was just a myth.
It's pretty amazing, right? And the discoveries go way beyond just the location. They found multiple layers of settlements, showing that Troy had this long, complex history, just like in the stories.
Wow. So they're really peeling back time, like layers of an onion.
Yeah, exactly. And some of those layers, they show signs of destruction, fire, even skeletal remains with injuries that suggest they died in battle.
That's incredible. It's like those ancient ruins are telling us their stories.
It really is. And even though we haven't found, Achilles armor or Helen's jewelry, they have discovered all sorts of Bronze Age artifacts, weapons, pottery, tools, everyday objects.
So they're getting a real glimpse into life back then.
Exactly. And all of it supports the idea that there was this sophisticated civilization in Troy at the same time the war supposedly happened.
So even if we don't have absolute proof that the Trojan War happened exactly like in the myths, there's a good chance there's a real historical basis for the story. It's like the line between myth and reality is blurring.
It really is. It makes you wonder how many other stories we think are just myths might actually have some truth to them, just waiting to be discovered.
That's what I love about all this. Exploration, discovery, it never really ends. There are always new stories to uncover, new perspectives to think about.
I couldn't agree more.
I'm really hooked on this whole archaeological angle. It's like we're uncovering a lost world,
It really is a fascinating mix of history, myth, and archaeology all coming together. The discoveries at Troy have been pretty amazing.
So let's get into it. What's some of the strongest evidence that suggests this wasn't just a made-up story, that Troy was a real place and this epic war might have actually happened?
Well, for one thing, the location of the site. It matches up really well with the descriptions in the ancient texts.
Okay.
It's in Hizarlik, in modern-day Turkey, and it overlooks the Dardanelles Strait. And those geographic features, they're mentioned by Homer and other writers.
So it's like the city was hiding in plain sight all this time.
Exactly. And it's more than just the location. When they excavated, they found multiple layers of settlement. It means that the city was built, destroyed, and rebuilt over time. A long, complex history, just like the stories say.
Wow. So they're digging through time. What do those layers tell us about what happened in Troy?
Some of them. They show signs of destruction, fire, even skeletons with injuries that look like they came from battles.
It's like those ruins are whispering stories of war.
Yeah.
Have they found any artifacts that connect directly to the Trojan War or the heroes? Like, I don't know, Achilles armor or something.
I wish. No Achilles armor yet. But they have found a ton of stuff from the Bronze Age, Weapons, pottery, tools, all sorts of things that give us a glimpse of what life was like back then.
So they're painting a picture of this really sophisticated civilization.
Exactly. A civilization that existed right when the war is supposed to have taken place.
So even if the war didn't happen exactly like in the myths, there's a good chance there's some truth to it. It's like myth and reality are all mixed up.
It's a good reminder that sometimes those stories, they have more to them than we think.
Yeah. Like how many other myths could have a little bit of truth hidden inside?
Right. That's what makes all of this so fascinating. There's always more to learn, more to uncover.
The Trojan War, myth or history, it's a story that still speaks to us today. It makes you think about storytelling, human nature, and the search for truth. It's a reminder to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, and to never stop digging for the truth. Until next time, happy exploring.